Quinn Hughes has been traded, and he has been traded for a package that included Flyers fans' favorite, Zeev Buium. Why weren't the Flyers able to make this deal? Charlie and I tell you on the Shootout. Well, Danny let us all down and didn't do the deal, Charlie. It might just be the end of the rebuild and time to start over because he didn't give up everything for a guy who's going to leave in a few weeks. If you haven't heard, it would be like a year and a half, but you know what I mean. If you haven't heard, I don't know how you'd be watching a hockey show and not know about this, but it has happened. Quinn Hughes has been traded. Vancouver ships him to Minnesota for what is a pretty decent return. They get Marco Rossi, who we are all pretty familiar with because of the rumors that have circulated around him over recent years.
Sure.
And of course, Zeev Buium, who I think some Flyers fans may think would have been the right pick over Jett Luchanko, along with winger Liam Ohgren and a 2026 first. Credit to the Minnesota Wild for looking at kind of the makeup of the league and going, yeah, with another star player, we might be able to just be right there with Colorado, Dallas. They're in an incredibly difficult division, but the time is kind of now for them with Kirill Kaprizov set to be making, what, $16 million soon. It's a bold move, but what did you think when you first saw the trade, just from the hockey standpoint, before we get into the Flyers, Charlie?
Yeah, well, from a hockey standpoint, I was impressed that Vancouver got as good of a return as they did. Now, granted, I disagree with some of their underlying premises. Like the idea that they were going into this trade saying, we need to get a young, like NHL caliber top six center. You traded Quinn Hughes. You're not going to be good. Why are you prioritizing guys who have a lower potential ceiling but can help you win because you need to get a second line center under Elias Pettersson? Like, that strikes me as dumb. Just go for the best assets. Don't worry about what they are because you are now officially a rebuilding team without Quinn Hughes. But once you go by what their parameters were, it's a good return. Like, Marco Rossi is a good player. He's ideally, I think, a solid enough second line center, maybe more than that. Zeev Buium, top tier prospect. Obviously, he's got some time in the NHL this year. He's shown flashes, been really good on the power play. Not very good at 5-on-5, but he's 20 years old. He's young. You expect him to get better there. Ohgren's a decent enough prospect, and then you get a first-round pick. That's a good return. It's a good return, especially with the rest of the league knowing that Quinn Hughes was not going to stay in Vancouver. So it's a good return for Vancouver, better return than I would have expected them to get given the parameters. But I think what it really boils down to is there were just a lot of teams that were willing to give up a lot for not even knowing if they're going to be able to re-sign him. They were basically willing to give up that much just to get him for 2 playoff runs, 1.5 seasons. And that was what it boiled down to.
See, that's the crazy part to me, and we'll get into that when we get to the Flyers part of this, because I wanted Quinn Hughes very badly. But a package like this, to me, unless I guess you think you can win the Stanley Cup without the pieces you're giving up, this is we're getting him for long term, not just 2 playoff runs potentially, as Minnesota is. And it is funny just looking at the return. I think a lot of us, when we heard, oh, well, Vancouver kind of wants young-ish NHL-ready players because they don't want to fall out of it. They're one of those teams that just thinks like, yeah, man, we want to host our 3 playoff games and get a little gate revenue.
Which is dumb because they're not going to.
No, they're not.
That's what their ownership wants.
When you look at the actual players, like Rossi turned 24 in September, Zeev turned 20 a week ago. So they're NHL guys, but they're not the Owen Tippett age guys I thought it was going to be.
Right.
If I had to like actually describe it. The disappointing part about this is that the Flyers didn't make a bold move, right?
Yes, it's absolutely disappointing.
Like, we're doing a mini pod about this. We'd do an emergency show. We'd probably do twice the number of shows the week they acquire a Quinn Hughes level player that we normally do if that were to happen.
Oh, of course.
From a content standpoint, disappointing. Obviously, you see a great player get moved, and what is the Flyers' plan? Well, they're not going to be drafting at the top of the draft in all likelihood. They got Martone, they got Michkov, they traded for Zegras, they traded for Drysdale, but that might be it in terms of guys in the top 10. It's now, how do you go and buy some of these guys? Trades, signings. Well, one of them got moved, and it's not to hear. That's disappointing, regardless of circumstance, before we get into that.
Yeah, it objectively is. And the Flyers are going to need to make these kinds of big moves at some point if they want this rebuild to work. They just don't have enough talent at the most pivotal positions on a roster. They have high-end talent, I would say. Some people might scoff at that, but like I believe Trevor Zegras is high-end talent. I believe Matvei Michkov has the upside to be high-end talent when he hits his ceiling. I think Owen Tippett at his best can be a high-end talent. That said, it's more of an inconsistency thing. And Travis Konechny, I know he has his haters, but we're talking about a point-per-game guy. I mean, they have talent. It's just they have talent in positions where usually the wingers are the supplements to the centers and the defensemen. There was a defenseman available. They did not get that defenseman. It's disappointing because you don't know how many times guys of this caliber or even close to this caliber are going to be available. What it seems like happened, though, and the reason why they didn't make the deal is because, and I haven't heard this like confirmed straight up, but reading between the lines and talking to the people I've talked to, seems like what happened was they got Vancouver on the line because obviously they checked in. Obviously they were interested in Quinn Hughes. And Vancouver basically said, look, we're looking for a high-end left-handed shooting defenseman, and we're looking for an NHL caliber, NHL quality, young veteran-ish NHL center who can play in your top six. And Flyers like, well, like we got Emil Andre and we don't really have that center that fits that mold. And then their response was, okay, well, if you don't have those pieces that you can offer us up, one of Porter Martone and Matvei Michkov, and then we can keep talking. And the Flyers basically were like, yeah, we're not going to talk about either of those guys. It's one of those things where it's frustrating. And my disappointment is less that the Flyers didn't do it and more that Vancouver was able to. Like, I was hoping that no one was going to offer a package like this. And then eventually Vancouver would swing back around to all the teams that didn't have perfect offers.
Like, so York and what?
Yeah, and then the Flyers could jump back into the bidding. It's just that once Minnesota offered Buium and Rossi, two guys who fit exactly what they wanted, the only way the Flyers are going to jump that offer is by offering one of Martone or Michkov. And frankly, I'm glad they didn't. I don't want them trading either one of those guys, especially when you don't know if you're going to have Quinn Hughes past a year and a half.
That is the issue for me, because Steve and I said this last night. I believe it came up when you had the mini pod when all these rumors started first circulating. The idea that anything should be off the table if Quinn Hughes is available is nuts to me. Like, you talk about there's no non-starters if Quinn Hughes is available. But confirming what I feared in terms of, like, if I was to give something up in this trade, Pat Brisson, his agent, just came out and said, yeah, we told every team we're not guaranteeing you anything. Quinn Hughes seems intent on becoming a free agent or ending up in Jersey in some way.
I'm not convinced he's definitely going to end up in Jersey, but it does seem like he definitely wants to at least become a free agent.
I'm going to connect the dots a little bit there. We'll see. But it does feel as if Quinn Hughes wants he doesn't want to be Jack, who signed away his whole prime for well under market value. Luke kind of got a little extra. Name may help out there. Like, hey, we got your two brothers locked up. Come on by. But he does seem to want to be a free agent. His agent's like, yeah, we're not guaranteeing anyone anything. In that circumstance, while I don't think anything should be off the table, I'm not willing to do it. I love Matvei Michkov. I am very excited about what Porter Martone could be. If you tell me, like, if this doesn't happen because he's not eligible for an extension until July 1st.
Right.
You tell me this trade doesn't go down. Vancouver goes through the season with him. Now he's got 1 year left. He can sign an extension. And the Flyers on July 1st trade for him, and they give up one of those two guys. And on July 1st, he signs for 7 years. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. That's not the circumstance that we're living in. You just can't give up these dudes because it's what the whole thing's based on. And the timeline right now, I'm looking at Minnesota. Yeah, man, if they go to the next two Western Conference Finals and he leaves, it was worth it for them. The Flyers aren't in that position. I'm looking at Vancouver. Quinn Hughes is maybe the second best defenseman in the league. There's an argument last year until he got hurt. He's having a better season than Cale Makar. Yeah. But Vancouver still stinks with him.
Yeah.
He's not getting you to a conference final by himself. Maybe that's a little different in the East. But like,
I still don't think he's getting the Flyers.
No, the Flyers are an improving team. I don't think they're a Quinn Hughes away from cup contention at their current state. Maybe in a few years. So if you're only getting him guaranteed for 2 playoff runs, and it would be the rest of this season and next year with, before Michkov's even 23, I just don't see how it makes sense for Danny. I want the bold moves. Nothing's off the table. But here, hard to be mad that they didn't do something that would be objectively not all that bright.
Yeah, as I said, my disappointment was less. Once I saw what the return was, my disappointment was less that the Flyers didn't do it. And obviously, I wanted to cover a team that had Quinn Hughes on it. It'd be a lot more fun to watch the Philadelphia Flyers if Quinn Hughes was on it. But my disappointment was less that they didn't do it, and it was more that Vancouver had gotten a team to give up that kind of package, because getting that kind of package made it essentially impossible the Flyers were ever going to match it unless they had assurances from Hughes and or Pat Brisson that, like, yeah, I'm going to sign on July 1st. Then you at least think about it. Because my whole view from the start was, look, if you don't have certainty that he's going to re-sign, I probably would give up Tyson Forrester as a centerpiece of a deal. It would be a risk, but you got to take some risks in this situation. And then I'd give up anybody else, no problem, but I'm not giving up Martone or Michkov, and I hold to that.
The A-level assets to me are those 2 guys. If it's a York, if it's a Forster, if it's Luchanko, Nesbitt, anything like that, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But for this, no. One last thing, because this is obviously the reactionary talk about the trade. Did drafting Jett Luchanko prevent them from trading for Quinn Hughes, Charlie?
It's a good question. I don't think so, because I still don't think you beat that offer. Yeah, but I mean, it certainly gets you in the ball. I mean, I guess they wouldn't have Buium, but my point is like, then you have one of the 2 pieces. You don't have the second one.
And I also don't know if it changes the Flyers' arithmetic in terms of where they are right now.
Yeah.
Like, if they have Zeev, all right, maybe they're a little bit better, but are you still like, oh yeah, let's flip him and turn him in? The team is exactly the same, except you have Quinn Hughes, and we're still in the, all right, so we just gave up a 20-year-old defenseman who could be the next Quinn Hughes for a year and a half.
Then it just comes down to whether they would even do it. Whether they'd be like, no, Zeev is our blue chip defenseman. Yeah. We don't need to go turn him in. We can just let him develop with the team. I don't know. I mean, I get it, because obviously Buium has been such a hot ticket conversation starter for Flyers fans. So to see him then get moved in a deal for another guy they wanted, I get it. I think there are a lot of variables here that I'm not going to be like, well, if they did this, then they would have done this. I'm not sure if they would have done that.
I just still don't know if it would have made sense. All right, so that is today's episode of the Shootout. Make sure you're following us right here on the YouTube page, and hit that like button. Be excellent to each other.